public forums. Do we have any public forum requests?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, good. All right. Item number 3. Item number 3 is a memorandum from myself in regards to senior housing options.
Motion to receive said memorandum and begin presentation.
Okay, there's not going to be a presentation tonight. What I did was, after our last meeting, I ended up speaking with the new executive director after it was televised and after there was an account of it in the newspaper of comments that were made. And I spoke to him, the executive director, Kristen Belden, who's a very, very nice guy, very knowledgeable guy. And what I did was, today, in fact, I sent out an email to the members of the subcommittee, and I outlined a synopsis of it, of my conversation that I had with him. And I just want to make sure, and I suggest to the subcommittee, and I know they will, it'll be part of their due diligence, just to make sure that they get him back in, because I think of some things that we assumed with them is not absolutely accurate. So I think we need to really get them in there, really talk about it, and the people in the subcommittee. I know I sent Mrs. Paul today. Did you get the email? I sent it to the vice president, to Councilor Flynn, and to Councilor Toronto, who are on the committee. But it's my synopsis of my conversation with them, and I think you know, after my conversation was that we absolutely can retain ownership of the property, both land and improvements. It certainly was right from the horse's mouth. So, so I look forward to you guys reaching out to him and talking to him, having him into one of your meetings. And Mr. Viveris, you wanted to make some comments in regards to that?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council, Anton Viveris, Superintendent Dean Hillo. I wasn't sure where you was going with this, and I was under the impression that at the last meeting, you had put reappointed the committee.
We did.
And they were going to look into it,
They are?
and that was my only.
So you're all set?
I'm all set.
We
Thank
did good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Viveris. Okay. All right. Item number 4, the consent calendar. Do we have any, Vice President? Do we have any
Yes,
items?
motion to approve the consent calendar minus items number 8 and 9.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve minus items 8 and 9. Any other items to be taken off? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 8, resolution of the Middletown School Committee RE binding arbitration.
Motion to receive said resolution.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Who pulled number 8?
I did.
Councilor Toronto.
Okay, thanks. I thought this was just important to, you know, better understand a little bit about the binding arbitration, so I was just looking to get an overview of kind of where we're at with that, and also, I didn't know if there was someone who could speak on that. Is there someone tonight who can speak on that?
There's no one from the school committee.
Okay. There's no one to speak on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or do we? Okay.
Linda
Please, go ahead, Linda.
Savastano, the Assistant Superintendent. There's, this is just a resolution that's going through regarding the concerns around binding arbitration. So they wanted to share it with you. The school committee already has voted on it in February and wanted to share it with you.
Okay.
That's been going out to all the districts, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. I caught that with somebody else, but that's been going out to all the districts.
Yes.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Okay. Item number 9, resolution of the Middletown School Committee State Education Funding Formula.
Motion to receive said resolution.
Second.
Motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Toronto.
Again, I'd like to just have someone speak on this issue. This state education funding formula has been something that's been popping up a lot recently, because this is the time of year, I'm sure it's been going on for a while, and I just kind of wanted to see if someone wanted to talk a little bit on kind of the school's position on the state education funding formula.
Linda Savastano, Assistant Superintendent. Again, I believe that the background to this going around is that there have been districts that have had some unexpected situations in terms of their funding. So I know we've talked a lot about funding formula over the many years, but then recently there have been some districts up north that were caught off guard by having decreases based upon the variations in the funding formula. So for example, a smaller district and their median value decreased, and as a result, they unexpectedly had a decrease of $1 million for their state aid, which they felt caught them off guard, and so have put out something asking for there to be more stability. We know that that was a 10-year plan, and that we are at the end of that 10-year plan with the funding formula, and that they're asking to have that looked at again.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, it's this year and next year, and that's it, right?
Yeah, well, we have 3 years, this year and then 2 more years, yes. So we're
Okay.
at the end of that, yes.
Okay,
You never
thank you.
thought that day would come, huh, Linda?
I know, well, we'll see kind of where it
Yeah.
goes. Sometimes, sometimes you're not quite sure what will happen.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
It's funny how you never heard from any of those other school districts and they were reaping the rewards of that. Join the club.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Toronto. Okay, other communications. Communication of Linda La Liberty, VP, EBCAP, Head Start, Early Start, request for extension of the JFK lease.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
Okay, motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Linda?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I come before the council to let you know that there's an opportunity here in Middletown. Some state funding has just been released to fund pre-kindergarten classrooms. So these are classrooms for children who turn 4 years old by September 1st. So it is the year they go before they go into kindergarten. And it's completely paid with state funds. The pre-K classrooms run for 6 hours a day, 180 days a year, so the school year. They are of no cost to families. So we currently run pre-K classrooms in Newport and in East Providence. We have also been running Head Start and Early Head Start classrooms and childcare for about 50 years. So I should have mentioned, I'm with East Bay Community Action Program. So the problem with the funding at this point is really not the funding, but the space. So we are currently in the JFK school. We sublease with Newport Public Schools. We have 2 Head Start classrooms in that building. We have a 3rd classroom that is not occupied by a class right now. It is currently being used as an office that is big enough and could be turned into a classroom. We would like to apply for the pre-K funding with the state. We've been successful. We've been successful with the application and the grant process, and also we've been successful with running the programs. We run high-quality programs. We have met all of the standards that Department of Ed puts out, their comprehensive early childhood education standards. We have just applied for a 5-star rating at the JFK building, which is the highest star rating you can get with state quality for childcare and preschool funding or preschool programs. So at this point, what we would ask the council is if they would consider allowing us to continue to lease the JFK building. We know that Newport, the lease with Newport is ending. We would like to you to consider to continue our tenancy there so that we can not only run this pre-K classroom, we will apply for 1 this year, but then expand in the upcoming years. I believe I gave out a flyer that kind of
did.
summarizes everything.
Linda,
So-
just so you understand, we're not going to make a decision tonight.
That I
We're
understand.
just receiving this information from you tonight.
Yep,
And once we have the opportunity to digest it, then perhaps later on, we'll direct the town administrator to work with you and the Newport
yep.
people in standing.
There is a deadline, and we want to apply for the classroom. I just want to be clear about that. We will apply. We have 1 more year there, and so we can either, if we get the grant, because it is competitive, We would then start it at the JFK building, at least run it for a year, and if this doesn't proceed to stay at JFK, we'll work with the superintendent to look for other space.
Okay.
We've talked about it, so the superintendent is aware of this and is behind this proposal.
But, so you
So-
know protocol, we're just receiving it tonight.
Sure, I understand, yeah.
Thank you.
It came up really fast.
Thank you, Linda.
They gave us a 30-day turnaround, so.
Okay, thank you,
All right.
Linda.
You're welcome.
When is the deadline?
March 28th. It came available February 28th.
Okay. So we're not gonna be able to make a decision on it.
February 28th, it came available. Oh, this is the first we're hearing of it?
It was posted February 28th.
Okay.
It has not been available to
2 weeks?
Middletown. Yeah, it's not been available to Middletown, these funds. They just made it available to all of the state. I think because the governor put the money in her budget. The budget has not been approved yet, the state budget.
So it hasn't been approved either.
So you're gonna apply either way?
I'm going to apply,
Yeah, okay.
and hopefully, if
Yeah.
we get the funding, we've got a year to figure it out.
Good.
If-
So we got time on
Yeah.
our side.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah, it feels like a crunch, but
That's your crunch on your side,
It's my
not on ours.
Well, good luck.
I'm good at crunch.
Thank you very much,
You're
Linda.
welcome, thank you.
Council Santos.
May I ask a question?
Linda?
Yes.
Sure.
In other words, you're coming in from Newport in competition with 7 of our current pre-K programs that are already in Middletown. Do I understand that correctly?
Well,
We
we
have
are
7.
already in Middletown. We have 2 classrooms in Middletown now, so we are one of
That are
those.
pre-K?
Mhm.
Okay.
They're 3 and 4-year-olds, correct.
Are they Middletown students?
Yes, and we have Middletown students in Newport. So we don't distinguish between, with Head Start and childcare, we don't distinguish between residency. The state funding does require that the children enrolled in a state-funded pre-K be a Middletown resident. So I don't know if others are applying for these grant funds. It's quite, I can show you the standards. They are very challenging to meet all of the standards. And we, like I said, we've been doing it. We know how to do this work. I don't know of other child care centers in either Newport or East Providence that are running a pre-K program.
So if I understand this correctly, you are getting a grant from the state of Rhode Island
I'm applying for a
to,
grant.
you're applying
Mhm.
to, in order to have a pre-K program.
Correct.
Okay.
Council Von Villas.
Are these identified students, what we call identified students?
No, the way
How
it-
do they get in the program?
The way that it works, parents would apply, and they apply through the Department of Ed. The Department of Ed then runs a lottery, and they decide which students actually are in the classroom. They give us a list.
Okay, so how are the decisions made? In other words, will my grandchildren be eligible for this program?
If your grandchild is a resident of Middletown, is going to be 4 by September 1st, they would be eligible. The parent would then apply through the Department of Ed, and they run, it's a random lottery that they run. And I believe they have some kind of a computer program.
Mr. President?
Council Flynn.
So are you getting applications for children, or do you know if the Department of Ed is getting applications for children and you don't have enough seats for them right now?
So Middletown residents have not been allowed to apply. In the past, if they applied for the pre-K classrooms that were operated in Newport, they would kick out. They wouldn't even accept the application.
But you did say you had Middletown students currently,
We
though.
have Newport students. Those are Head Start slots, so I don't want to confuse people. That's federal funding. Head Start is a different program
Is that
than
qualified?
this. And to qualify for Head Start, there is an income qualification. We do get applications from families. We have what they call a selection criteria that is approved by our parent-run council and our board of directors. That allows points for those applications, and the child with the highest points gets the next seat. And I'm just going to say the high points go to children who are experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, low-income families. So those families are the Head Start classrooms.
So
So
this,
those are a little different.
this grant would not be for that population. This grant would be for anyone who made the age criteria.
Age and residency, correct.
And how many students do you have per class, or what ratio do you maintain?
This will be 18 students. There will be a state certified teacher, an assistant teacher, so there'd be 2 adults.
2 to 18.
We also look for additional funding to put a 3rd adult because we think that that's the best way to run an early childhood programming. And sometimes that's through child care funds. We do accept the child care assistance program. So families, and we also offer before and after care for those families that need a longer day than a 6-hour day.
Mr. President? In other words, do these parents pay anything to this pre-K?
The pre-K 6-hour day, there's no cost to families. If they want before or after care, then there is a cost to the child care piece.
So if I understand, it's no cost, you're using grant money from the state, which basically is our money, is taxpayers' money, while 7 businesses in town pay taxes to the town of Middletown.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, there's 7 businesses that are listed, that I have here listed. And these have a building, they pay taxes to the town of Middletown. You're not paying any taxes to the town of Middletown. You're getting money from the state to boot. Are you going to be paying rent to the town of Middletown for use of that school?
We currently do
They do.
pay rent,
You
yes.
pay rent?
Yes, we do. Rent, utilities, all that.
Mr. President?
Council Flynn?
So this program, it's not part of our school system.
It is not part of the school system, correct.
Okay, so is there any cost, this might be a question for Mr. Brown, any cost for this program to be available to Middletown students?
No.
And do I need to be concerned about the facilities report that we got?
There are issues that we need to review regarding the condition of the building, yes, if it's going to be leased for a long period of time.
But I think it wouldn't have,
Council Trump.
I'm sorry,
Go
Mr. President.
Go
Thank you. What is that window showing? I thought I saw that these repairs were something that we need to do in the next 2 or 3 years. Did I misread that somewhere?
The report is designed around a 5-year window,
Okay,
so, presently we manage the building as if it's going to be shut down within 2 years. So if this is something that is going to stay open longer, then we do need to look at the facilities report and determine how we're going to address the capital improvements that are necessary.
okay. So I think at this point, you've got your work cut out for you, and you
Right.
get the grant, and then you're gonna come back to us, hopefully, and tell us more good stuff that we just heard.
Okay, great.
Council Lombardi?
And I did give you my contact information. Feel free to contact me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council Lombardi?
So I'm going to try to kind of make an assumption with this, that the governor's put in the budget for this grant. How long is the grant good for?
They have been good for 3 years. We currently, the classrooms we are running now, they are not asking us to reapply. They're going to allow us to continue with the funds at this time.
So there's no guarantee with the next budget, or the budget after that, or the budget after that, that this will be in the budget. This is the governor putting seed money in to start pre-K.
So, yeah, there's currently over 1,000 seats that are being funded, and she is looking to add another 500 seats.
But there's no guarantees. It's
Nothing,
not.
no.
I can tell you there's not.
I mean, I think it's the
So-
public will
So
in the
here's my
state.
point. Well, here's my point, and this is where I'm going with this. It's like something else that happened here not long ago. When you start a program
Mm-hmm.
and the money goes away, or it's one-time funds, you've got a program that you need to fund down the road. Who's gonna pick that ball up when you're gone and you don't have that money anymore?
Yeah, again, I
Is
think
it
the
town of
goal is,
Middletown- So is it the town of Middletown and the school department that, you said the superintendent's behind this, and it's nice that she's behind this. And pre-K's great, my kids all went to pre-K, we paid for it. But at the end of the day, if it's a successful program, and it's a good program, and you espouse the fact that these kids are ready when they go into kindergarten and they get into first grade because they went into pre-K, it's not gonna fall through the cracks at that point. Somebody's gonna get asked to fund that program.
or as you said, parents could pay. I mean, that's another option.
Well, the taxpayers pay now.
You know, sir, I.
The taxpayers are paying for this program. This is tax dollars. We're paying for it.
Okay.
The governor's putting it in the budget. That money's coming from someplace.
Again, I think that's.
I'm not against it.
Okay.
I'm not against it. What I'm saying is that somebody up here, in 3 years, when possibly that money's not gonna be there, is gonna be asked to fund this program.
Right.
I guarantee you it's gonna happen.
Well, we run a nonprofit. We've been running Head Start for over 50 years, which
It's
is
not your problem.
federal funds.
It's our problem.
The
But it's
state
gonna happen.
funds, of course I can't guarantee that they will be here.
But
They've been
again,
around
tonight-
for 6 years.
We're just receiving this from you tonight, Linda, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'd like to respond to Council Lombardi. This is why I asked if it was part of the school department. It's not, so we're not,
Someday.
well, and only if it's sustainable.
Okay.
Well, and some school departments are applying for the funds. That is an option.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
Some are.
And you would reapply in 3 years when that
Of course,
grant ran
yeah.
out?
If
That's
it's
the plan.
available.
If
If
it's
the money is-
available.
You don't have a guarantee this time. So again, we're just receiving this tonight.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens down the
You
road.
know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like a real good idea, but it sounds like a mandate in the making. That's where it's going, and, you know, everyone wants to support that, you know, they really do. But when, like Rick says, when it's gone, you know, it's gonna be a mandate, and the taxpayers are gonna have to pick up the program.
Yeah, I mean, I could get you some literature from the governor, but, I mean, I don't participate in that part of the funding. I try to get the
We may
funding
know
and
some
get it into
legislators that could get
communities.
that for us.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you,
thanks, Linda.
thank you.
Okay, item number 11, communication of Pat LeBeau, Forest Avenue School Clerk, and Cam Ventura, Forest Avenue School Nurse. RE requests us support for the Proud to Be an American Day at Forest Avenue School.
Motion to receive said communication and approve $1,000 for the Proud to Be an American Day celebration for the students at Forest Avenue School to be appropriated from the council president's discretionary fund.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second. Vice President is recusing
Yeah.
himself from this.
Yeah, it's my sister's requesting
Okay,
the
so do we
funds,
have, yeah, Pat, Cam, you want to come on up to the mic? Okay. You know I got to bring you up to the mic, you know? Just introduce yourself.
Pat LeBeau, 40 Bayview Park, Middletown,
Hi, Pat.
Forest
And-
Avenue School
And
Clerk.
this is a great cause, a great job that you and Cam do on this. So I'm certainly going to support it, and I'm pretty confident my colleagues will as well, but I can't let you off. I had to bring you up to the mic, you know. I had
It
to
was
put-
wonderful last year.
I had to put
We
you,
had a wonderful time.
yeah,
The
you did a
kids were
great
so
job with
excited
that.
with the shirts.
okay. Okay, I'm going to let you off the hook now, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. To allocate $1,000 from the President's discretionary fund. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, please note the Vice President's coming back to the dais. Okay, item number 12, communication of Cheryl Robinson, President of Turning Around Ministries, RE, requests of support by placing an ad in the souvenir book or making a contribution to TAM.
Motion to receive said communication and place a half-page ad in the TAM souvenir booklet, $70, to be appropriated from the council president's discretionary fund.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 13, communication with Lieutenant Corey Hawk, Newport Police Department Chairman, AINPP, request for a waiver of detail fees for the Quinnick Island Police Parade.
Motion to receive said communication and waive all detail fees for the Quinnick Island Police Parade.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been seconded. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Town council business. Communication of Council Lombardi with enclosures, homestead exemption.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Council Lombardi.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow councilors. In recent months, there's been a good deal of discussion regarding the property tax burden placed on our residents. One concerns the ability of seniors living on a limited income to stay in their homes. Another is our children's ability to make a home in Middletown to raise their families. Affordability, predictability, and simplicity are the keys to any tax plan. Like many coastal communities, Middletown has seen an increase of large second home construction in the past several years. With those homes, while those homes have added to the town's tax base, they have also led to an increase in home prices that in some cases have increased the tax assessments of local residents. As a means of providing tax relief to Middletown residents, I'm proposing that we implement a homestead exemption similar to that recently adopted in Narragansett. This proposal would give up to a 10% homestead exemption to property occupied as the primary residence of a Middletown taxpayer. I want to emphasize that. Primary residence of a Middletown taxpayer. Taxpayers applying for the exemption would have to provide evidence such as a driver's license, voter registration, and tax returns to prove that they occupy the property as their primary residence. The exemption would be applied to the property's tax assessment and would be set yearly by the council. So to make that clear, it can be up to 10%, and the council will have the ability to set it at anything below that. But it can't go any higher than 10%. It'll be set yearly by the council. I see this as a simple, fair, and predictable way of giving a tax break to Middletown residents. It's also an incentive for young people to settle in Middletown and purchase a home in which to raise a family. More importantly, it gives much needed relief to our seniors. This is a simple, effective means of providing tax relief to Middletown residents that can be implemented sooner rather than later. Lastly, while this proposal would need enabling legislation by the General Assembly, it should not be difficult, as similar plans have been acted in other communities around the state, including Narragansett. If the council agrees that this is a good proposal, we should contact our legislative delegation and ask them to work with the solicitor to draft a bill that can be presented in the current legislative session. So in the packet that's in the council with the docket, you'll find an ordinance, a model ordinance, that the solicitor has put together based on what they're doing in Narragansett. There's also drafted legislation based on the exact same legislation they did put in for Narragansett that was approved by both houses of the legislature and has been successfully implemented in Narragansett. There's also a resolution in the packet. So I'd like to open it up for discussion to my fellow councilors, but I can tell you that this is a way to help the people that live in this town. They live in the town full-time, they pay their taxes, they send their kids to school, they live here. There are seniors who've lived here and helped support this community for years. And with the seniors in particular, it's the exemption, the homestead exemption, their senior citizens exemption, and in many cases, their veterans exemption. It gives them much needed relief. It helps them when the big house next to them and their assessment goes up and they're affected by that. And if their exemption is, say it's 8%, and their tax goes up by 3%, hey, they're 6% to the good. This makes all the sense in the world. This is simple. Anybody can understand it. It's not complicated. And it's for Middletown residents. It's for people that live here, not somebody that lives here 2.5 months a year and makes $6,000 a month when they rent their house out. These are for the people that are footing the bill in this town every single day of the year. So,
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up to any councilors that want to have any questions, we have 3 people that signed up to speak on this. Senator Lula De Palma, you were the first one to submit. Senator, come on up. Nice to see you this evening.
Mr. President, members of the council, it's good to be here. Let me wish you a early happy St. Joseph's Day, which is tomorrow. I'll be certain to have at least one or two Zaples. I encourage you to have one, as a couple as well. I give the council credit for and applaud you for working on this. It's a great thing to be looking at. As Councilor Lombardi indicated, this is patterned after the Senate bill, or the bill that was passed for Narragansett, backed by Senator Sheen. And if you want to look it up, it's Senate Bill 2188 from 2016. I can leave a copy with the clerk after. And he did a great job of articulating what the bill does, and if it mimics the Narragansett bill, it's up to a 10% for homestead for folks who live here, up to a unit dwelling of 5 or less. If it's a mixed use, it can be appropriated. That's what Narragansett did. Middletown can choose to do that or not. It's up to your discretion, however you like. Obviously, myself, Rep. Ruggiero, Rep. Abney, and Rep. Kortrevin will certainly work to move this over the goal line, should you choose to do this. Precedence has been set for Narragansett, so it should be a easy shot. I'm not a golfer, but hopefully an easy putt to get it over. Nothing's ever easy. I don't want to bet on anything, but it should be easy and straightforward. If there's any questions I can answer, I'm here, but I wanted to at least be here to say I applaud you for doing this. It is moving it in the right direction for the residents of Middletown, regardless of they're just starting, they've been here for 70 years or 100 years or somewhere in the middle.
Any questions of Senator De Palma? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Viveras, Anton Viveras.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Anton Viveras, 110 Indian Hill Road. I have to ask a question right off the bat. How can this be predictable when your exemption can change from year to year? With the proposal that was put forth by the Tax Exploratory Committee, you knew exactly where you stood. The exemption is not going to change more than 2%. And you can figure it out for a run of 10 years. Because the Tax Exploratory Committee looked at several states and their property tax system, including Florida's homestead exemption. We looked at, we came, Narragansett, but that again can change from year to year. The Florida homestead exemption sought to ease the burden of homeowners by exempting property taxes on the first $5,000 on a homeowner's residence. It was increased to $10,000 during the 1960s. In 1980, the exemption was increased to $25,000, and on January 29, 2018, voters approved an increase of $50,000 for non-school assessments. The homestead exemption reduced the value of a home for assessment of property taxes by $50,000. So a home that was actually worth $100,000 would be taxed as though it was worth only $50,000. Florida homestead exemption capped, like the Exploratory Committee wanted to do, capped the rate at which property assessments may be increased annually. Though millage rates may be changed, the assessed value of a house with the homestead exemption can be increased by, it's fixed, the increase is fixed. The amendment capped the increase of the assessed value of the home with a homestead exemption for the lesser of 3% or the rate of inflation. We're using CPI. If a homeowner has a homestead exemption on the home value of $100,000 in 1995, and the exemption was still valid in 2005, 10 years later, the most the home could be assessed is approximately $126,000. $26,000 increase in 10 years. This is not going to do that. It was proposed by a town council candidate in 2018 that a homestead exemption for year-round homeowners and cited the Narragansett Homestead Plan that currently reduced taxes up to 10%. What he didn't tell you was according to his website, he had a conversation with the town manager and was told that the town increased the taxes on all other properties to make up the loss. The budget remains the same. Now, on the last page of the resident, under conclusion, it says, if a 10% homestead exemption was applied, then it would establish, or administrator would establish, that those qualified taxpayers would see the tax bill increase approximately 7.5%. Resident property that do not, would see a decrease of approximately 7.5%. Residential property that do not qualify for homestead exemption would experience an increase of approximately 2.8%. Where is that equal across the board? Commercial property would experience an increase of approximately 2.3%. And in using the $47,500,000 target levy, that would have required the residents and tangible rate, which is what you charge in addition to property tax for businesses, would increase to $14.13, and the commercial rate to increase to $18.68. Using the alternate method, there is no difference on the impact of taxes for single-family dwelling. However, the tax for a medium-value commercial property would be slightly higher at 13.07.
Mr. Rivera, your time is up. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to wrap it up.
At the last meeting, there was no mention or discussion about the homestead exemption. And there was no mention as to the progress made by RIPEC. Now, in less than 2 weeks, we get this. Maybe the word might be out that RIPEC is favorable to the original proposal?
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Time is up.
Thank you.
Let's not make assumptions. There's been a lot of people that make a lot of assumptions. Okay, Lawrence Frank.
Can we get a copy of that, please? Anton's is in it?
Just read from the document.
It's in the docket.
It's in the docket.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Just read from
Thank
it.
you. I did, but I didn't know it was that.
Mr. Frank, in the future, give the stuff to the clerk. She'll pass it on to the council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Lawrence Frank, 8 O'Donnell Road, Middletown. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Lombardi. This is an exceptional idea. I have some comments about it, but I think in whole, it's wonderful. First of all, a housekeeping method. There appears to be an error in section 34.1. It has capital B, parentheses 2. I think it should be small b. Oh, reverse that. It should be capital B.
Could you speak a little
Mr.
bit
Frank,
louder?
I'm not sure, I'm having a hard time hearing
I think
you
it's,
all.
you need to use
This
small-
one?
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah, turn the mic right up. There you go.
This work?
Yes,
Yes.
better.
So in section 34.1, it should be capital B, parentheses 2, I think, not small b. Is that correct?
If you turn your head away, we can't hear
Okay,
you.
is that correct?
You're probably correct.
Okay, fine. I have a question. In B, parentheses 2, where it says corporate entity, what are the tax advantages to this type of organization, and should this organization be allowed an exemption? Question, in G, documents required when applying for an exemption are different than Narragansett's, and I'd like to know why. In G, parentheses J, knowingly giving misinformation, that is, giving misinformation about whether you're a resident or not. Is this sanction sufficient for wealthy individuals? This is not much of a deterrent. I think there should be a much higher penalty involved in that. The proposal references a 10% homestead exemption. the 10% reduction is a misdirect. It is only 7.25%. Excuse me, 7.52%. The 10% is based on a higher residential rate rather than the current mill rate. The savings on a $345,000 home, which is the median price for a house in Middletown, would be less than $1 a day. Does anyone here believe that's enough for someone who is financially vulnerable to remain in their home? As an aside, according to Housing Works Rhode Island, a house with a mortgage of $346,000 requires an annual income of $95,000, something that is not really available for most low-income or moderate-income people. At the very least, the homestead exemption should be no less than 30% based on the current mill rate. Here is how it would be paid for. Almost 50% of the residents in Middletown are rentals. Many rental properties are taxed at a residential rate. They are businesses and should be taxed as such, paying the commercial rate, not the residential rate. Depreciation, heat, water, electricity, landscaping services are all fully deductible for property investors. They reduce taxable income. Individual homeowners are not able to use these tax write-offs. All rental property needs to be taxed at the commercial rate. There are many second homes in Middletown. They should be paying a surcharge on their property taxes. Many second homeowners are here less than 25 days out of the year. They contribute little to the economy in Middletown and nothing to the state in the way of income taxes. The town should identify all second homes, and for them, there should be a surcharge of 15% of their current property taxes. The mill rate for commercial entities, including all rental properties, should be raised. Recent tax changes have given advantages to businesses. What was once a top rate of 34% is now about 20%. Businesses and rental property owners are now paying less in federal and state taxes. They have a financial and tax advantage year-round. Homeowners do not. They should be required to contribute more fully to the tax base. The Middletown tax assessor has presented a memorandum as part of Mr. Lombardi's proposal. The assessor should be directed to provide another memorandum using the changes I have outlined. I believe this will give more than superficial relief to full-time homeowners than the current proposal. The result is a more equitable distribution of the tax burden. In addition, the proposed application for a homestead exemption should be provided to the council before any votes are taken. Differences with the Narragansett and Middletown applications need to be explained, and I have included a copy of that application. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frank.
Thank you.
Okay, any councilors have any comments?
Mr. President? So,
Councilor Flynn.
thank you. So I just want to clarify, Councilor Lombardi, this is essentially the Narragansett's ordinance? It is. It is, okay. And you got some information via Mr. Brown from the tax assessor's office?
We sat down and discussed it, we went over it. Tax assessor came up with the figures based on the information.
Yeah, wrote the memo to Mr. Brown, and that's how we got that. And then the solicitor did the resolution, is that, I'm just trying to get the resource of all the stuff that we did get, because
The
it's...
solicitor also met with us, and he drafted the resolution, he drafted the model ordinance, and he drafted the legislation, all based on what came up through Narragansett. It was kind of like, Narragansett was a template for us.
Okay, I just needed a base of what I was looking at, because I had not seen it before. So I just want to clarify, so this homestead exemption would be for year-round residents?
Middletown full-time
It
resident.
would be for the way it's drafted, and I don't want to use the term year-round, would be.
Mr. Solicitor, would you bend the mic towards yourself? Thank you very much.
It would be for residents who have the taxpayers of their primary residence in Middletown, which is the same standard for most of the other exemptions we have, whether it's a senior exemption. Doesn't require you to be here 365 days a year, but would require you to be here more than half of the year and to have qualify as your domicile, your primary residence.
Okay.
How do you know that? How do you know
Same,
if
the same, the
somebody's...
same way that you would verify that as you do for the senior exemption or the veterans exemption through your tax returns, your voter registration, your driver's licenses, those sorts of things.
Okay.
So, just to get the clarifications down so that I didn't misunderstand, as we go forward. So essentially, it's equal to raising the taxes for part-time residents and businesses. Is that true? Essentially, bottom line? Do I
Somebody's
have that
paying
right?
for it.
Essentially.
Okay. The result, yes. So Mr. Durgan's 10% benefit actually reduced to 7.5 because everyone gets subject to that higher tax rate, but the ones that qualify under the homestead exemption, they pay it on a lower assessment. Do I have that right? Okay, all right. So a couple of questions for the team that worked on this. I noticed you did it by a percentage, and I did went online, looked up exemption. Yeah, why not a flat rate, which would be more predictable for the town, perhaps? I'm just kind of throwing this out there because this is new information for me. I looked at Narragansett's based on your memo, Mr. Durgan. Their residential rate is $9.95 per thousand. Middletown's is $13.62. Our tax rate is 27% higher than Narragansett. I'm just not sure if we shouldn't be considering a higher exemption rate. I just wanted to throw that out there for true relief. Also, if I read this correctly, it says the council can set the rate every year. And if I'm wrong in anything I say, please correct me, jump in. So they could, in some years, say, okay, we can't afford it, the rate's going to be 0. And all these people that have been counting on this would not have it. I just have some concerns to throw out there. And should there really be an income qualifier? It seems to me that some people who would be applying for this don't really have a need. Personally, I think this should be for single-family homes owner. I don't think that multi-dwelling units or mixed-use units should have access to a homestead exemption because they already get a subsidy by the rents of the other units. Just my opinion. They already have the ability to supplement their income. Let's see. I also think the way that this was calculated, you've got the businesses going up at, or proposed percentage of 2.28%, and the residents' tax rate going up 2.7% or 2.79%. I think the burden should, or the burden, I think the benefit to those who need it should be shared equally. I think that those percentages should be the same, business or residents. I think we should all share for it. And if you really want long-term relief, you have a ceiling of 10%, there should be a floor of 5%. Going back to that, the council can set it at 0. I think there should be a floor so that people can count on at least some relief. Let's see, it's a laudable short-term solution. I like the idea. I think there should be some longer-term benefit that people can count on from it that benefits, those who really need it, and give some predictability to the tax obligation. And I'd like to know what the process is from here and the time frame. Those are just my comments on what I read.
Thank you,
If I get
Councilor
anything wrong,
Flynn.
let me know.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Terry, thank you. That was a lot. You covered a lot there, and those were a lot of my questions as well. The Tax Exploration Committee did look at Homestead, the committee we had formed to help make recommendations to some changes of our current tax methodology. One thing we considered were tax exemptions. How does Florida do it? And basically it came back as kind of it was a Band-Aid. It does help. It will help. It helps local residents, people who are here all year round, that they've committed to the community here. It will help young people, families, and seniors because it would give predictability. So I think it's a tool that we could use, but I think it needs altering, okay? And that's what we came up with in that meeting, that this isn't the solution that we were seeking out. Do I think it's something that we should consider? Definitely. I think this is, a tool that we can have at the town level. But at this point, I think we've got a lot going on. I know we're supposed to be receiving the RIPEC document. It was last week, Sean, I think you said 2 weeks, and I think we're at 2 weeks. So have we gotten the document?
We are rerunning models right now, so we're still working on it.
So I just think this kind of is a little bit in conflict with that. And I do really think we need to look more at other options. There are other options, and this has to be vetted out. This has only popped up in 2 weeks, and I think this is a big decision. In fact, in the tax, we had a tax, we had a senior exemption subcommittee, and we were putting the senior exemptions and veterans exemptions, and that was what we were chartered to do. And in that meeting, Rick, we decided that we were going to pass that and get that done, and then we would come back and explore, basically this tax exemption that we're considering, the homestead. So just with those things being said, I'd like to make a motion that we move this maybe to the Tax Exploration Committee. I know we discontinued I know we discontinued the committee that Rick was on and Mrs. Santos, so I can't refer it back to that, but that was on our minutes of what we wanted to do next, okay? So I just think there's a lot of pieces to this, a lot of questions, and to try to pass something tonight that we're gonna send to the state, I just cannot support that.
So we're still having conversations, so I'm sure there's other people who want to weigh in. Anybody want to weigh in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. You listen to everybody, and this is new, and all this information is new to absorb and try and digest, and it's like anything else, it's a moving, fluid document that needs to be looked at, and I'm certainly not ready to make a decision on it tonight. But having said that, I do applaud Rick for bringing it forward, because anytime you're trying to help taxpayers with any type of relief, that's a good thing, right? But you just want to make sure that you get it right. So I do have some questions, Terry. A lot of those questions were, I was trying to keep pace with your pace. So, I guess my first question was, I'd want to see it in dollars, because a lot of times people that listen at home or sit in the audience, and some that sit up here, we may not understand all the percentages off the top of our heads. So what do? When we look at comparables, we look at what the average homeowner or assessment is in Middletown. I think Mr. Frank said it was $346, or Rick said it was $346. So what does that equate to in dollars? Mr. Frank said $1 a day, so that'd be $365 a year, right? I'm gonna take it that his numbers are accurate. I'm not sure. And that's not a shot at you, it just needs to be explored like anything else. Anybody can throw a number and see if it sticks, and that's not what I'm saying you're doing, but those are things we need to look at. And so you go, well, $1 a day, every dollar counts, it's $365, that's some type of relief, that's great. But is it the relief that's needed? Is it gonna solve the issues that are at hand? And when I look at that, one side of me says, that's great, the other side of me says, I'm not sure, and the middle part side of me says, maybe it's not enough. So, I'd like to see it in dollars, that's my first, the average, what it would save. And of course, when you do something like this, you're not taking away from the tax base as a whole, so who's paying for it? So it looks to me like the businesses. Terry, you brought up some points. Should it be everybody, or should it be some type of qualifiers built in for the people that really, really need it? I don't know. Or maybe it does go out to the resident, like its name, homestead, right? Full-time resident. So who determines, I guess it's the council that determines what percentages each year, and like you said, I'm not sure that's the predictability that is there that's being presented, because who knows budget-wise what's thrown at you. You can go, geez, maybe we need to back off this year or 2 years or not, and maybe it could be 1% this year, and any relief is good, I get it. but I'm not sure it's the predictability that's being presented. And that's not a shot at you, Rick, at all. It's just, it's the nature of, this Homestead Act. So, how do you police who rents and who doesn't? I mean, short-term rentals, they have to register and all that, but, you know, how do you know if somebody's not renting their house out for a month in the summertime and gets 15 grand or 10 grand? Because that's what they're going, that's what I'm saying, so.
If you are, and once again, if to qualify for a senior exemption, a veteran's exemption, you don't have to live here 12 months out of the year. You can go to Florida in January, February, and March and come back, so long as this is your primary. You're spending at least half the year here. You're voting here, you're paying your taxes
I'm not talking
here.
about residence,
Yeah.
Pete. I'm talking about qualifying under rentals. That, people that rent their house out should not be allowed to have this exemption. It's not fair. So all I'm looking for is equity. And I don't know how you do that. I guess that's the question. That's just a question. So, I'm a little bit bothered by the fact that, again, I applaud anybody that tries to bring anything forward, but I don't like, it's almost like we're trying to circumvent, maybe it's not the right word, and please don't take this personally, Rick. It's almost like we're trying to circumvent the Tax Exploration Committee. It's like we're trying to circumvent the tax reform that we're looking at. And there is a lot going on. So I think we can't do all of them, right? Financially, you're not going to be able to do all of them. So I would just rather see dollars. I want to see more figures. I'd like to see more about it. That's what I'd like. I'm not going to, if we decide on this tonight, I won't support it, but I'd like to see more. I'm not saying I won't support it if there's more information coming forward in dollars and apples for apples with other communities and stuff like that. I think that's the right thing to do, so.
Councilman Lombardi.
Thank you.
So, this is not new. This did not pop up in the last 2 weeks. February 27th of last year, I submitted a request to the council president to put almost exactly the same proposal on the docket. It went on the docket. I got a phone call on a Friday afternoon. I can tell you exactly where I was. I was sitting in the Shaw's parking lot. I got a call from a member of the town council on the Tax Exploration Committee, Mr. Toronto, very passionately asking me not to do this. That he wanted to have the proposal from the Tax Exploration Committee vetted first. Initially, I was reluctant to do it. I felt very strongly about the homestead exemption. He asked me why, if I felt so strongly about it, that I didn't bring it to Tax Exploration Committee. I felt that was a fair question. I felt it was a fair question. With that, I made a couple more phone calls. I spoke to the council president, and I told him, in deference to Dennis and Councilor Antone and the citizens that sat on that committee, that I would withdraw that docket request. But I was going to do it in public, and I did. And I made a comment that night. I reserved the right to bring it back. And I'd done that. And I did it after their proposal was vetted upstate. I did it after it was decided by the legislature, just like this is going to be vetted up at the legislature, that they weren't going to move forward with it. This has nothing to do with RIPEC. It's apples and oranges. That's number one. Number two, I feel that there are some good points being made here about the percentages and the figures. I have no problem with making it a higher rate. None at all. Let's do it. Let's figure out what the number is. I have no problem with, if we're going to go with a percentage, making 5% the bottom and keeping the top at 10%. Or coming up with a flat number. You want to come up with a flat number? Let's look at that. I'm not sending this back to any committee. I'm not gonna support it. We can sit with the tax assessor, we can sit with the solicitor, we can make some suggestions, but as I said last week about something else, we're spinning our wheels and we're committing things to death, and they die there. They die there, they're on life support. We need to move. At some point, we need to get something done. It doesn't mean down the road, you can't come up with another proposal for tax relief. It's just something we can get done sooner rather than later. That's all it is. Maybe it opens the door for something else. But we need to figure out how we're going to give our citizens, our residents, and I mean our residents. When they talked about the 2% cap last week, you talked about the impact on the commercial, on the business owners. There was a number that was put out there. There's an impact on the commercial taxpayer in this one also. But it's a smaller number because the relief we're giving is a smaller subset, because it's only residents. It's not every taxpayer in town.
Mr. President.
Let me finish. I have the floor.
Oh.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, if we gotta send it back for tweaking, I have no problem with that. But it's not going to any committee. I'm not sending it back to that taxpayers committee. I'm not sending it back to any committee. I'm not gonna support that. We can sit down with the tax assessor, we can sit down with the town administrator, we can sit down with the solicitor. People here can put some suggestions on the table tonight, and we'll go back and look at it. I have no problem with a higher rate, I have no problem with a higher percentage, and making sure that it's not zero. This has been lingering for a year. Anybody that says it hasn't, I have the documentation that says it hasn't been.
Mr. President.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you. Just want to clarify a couple things that were just said. I would agree. Mr. Lombardi did put it on the docket. It was the same night that I was going to be presenting what the Tax Exploration Committee was going to, recommendations and things that we wanted to move forward on. This happened to be the same night. This has been going on forever, but it just happened to be the same night. So he said, hey, I understand. People are going to try to learn what you're proposing, so I'll take it off the docket. So that being said, that is correct. This came up in a committee. We had formed we formed a subcommittee to look at the senior tax exemptions. And we wanted to put the senior tax exemptions and make some adjustments, make it a little more fair for people. And we talked about this again in regards to homestead, as we talked about in other committees. So it keeps coming up. I think it's a tool we should explore in this town. But we also made an agreement that we would pass the senior exemptions and the veteran exemption before we looked at a homestead.
No, we never said we passed any.
One at a time. You'll have your time to
The
speak.
tax subcommittee said that they would like to review the homestead after we got our first recommendation on the exemptions, okay? So we proposed our exemptions 3 or 4 months ago to get approved and vetted out, and that's still not done. And I'm not sure how this is getting in front of that. Because as a subcommittee, we said we weren't going to do that. We were going to wait and get one thing done at a time. We've got enough projects going on. So I just wanted to clarify it. I didn't want you to think I was saying that you didn't originally put this on the docket, but we had talked about it at the tax exploration meeting, and that's in our minutes. So I'm just really psyched that people are very passionate about tax relief. Because we're talking a lot about it, and I'm all for it. So this needs to be vetted out. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Councilor Von Villas. Okay, Councilor Lombardi.
I just wanted to correct what you said, because we never, as a council, said we would pass any of that tax exploration. We sent it out to be looked at by other organizations. We never said we would pass.
No, there's
Oh,
nothing. Okay.
you'll have your shot. Councilor Lombardi.
So the tax subcommittee is dead. The council president sunsetted that. at the beginning of the session of this council, along with several other subcommittees. That's number one. Number two is that we already have senior exemptions. We were just going to tweak it and raise the exemptions. That's nothing new. So to say that we were going to pass senior exemptions, we were going to pass some modifications to the senior exemptions. We already have senior exemptions in place. And yes, we were going to pass the modifications. And yes, we discussed the homestead exemption. But the fact of the matter is that subcommittee is dead. And I'm bringing this forward because it no longer exists. And we need to discuss it. And this is the place where these things need to be discussed. On camera, in public, in front of everybody. Not in some subcommittee. This is where things need to be vetted, up here.
Councilor Toronto.
That meeting, that subcommittee met 3 times, just 3 times. And we made a recommendation to move it forward and some changes, okay? And then it was basically decided that we no longer needed that subcommittee. I was shocked. I actually brought it up and said I thought we needed that. We were going to go back and start looking at homestead. That was our next thing on our docket to look at once we passed the senior and veterans exemptions, which we still haven't passed. It was on the docket last time, and I don't know why it's not on the docket tonight. We were supposed to have it read in last week, or last meeting, and today would have been our second reading, and we would have been passing, I would have been trying to pass the changes that we made for the exemptions. And instead, it's not even on the docket. I'm not even sure why, and I kind of would like to know how come it's not on the docket.
Councilor Toronto, did you put a request in to resurrect it, to put it on the docket?
I'm sorry?
Did you put a request in
No,
to resurrect it because originally it was going to go on the docket?
It was put on the docket.
It was put on the docket, and then it wasn't addressed. And then later on, did anybody or yourself, if you sponsored it, did you put a request in to resurrect it and bring it back to the docket?
Actually, Sean put it on the docket, and I also had a request that evening to get an update on it.
If I remember right, did you take it off?
No.
Okay.
No,
it wasn't you.
the administration took it off.
Okay, all
The
right.
assessor is correct in the ordinance.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether, I guess I needed to maybe, again, ask to have an update on it, or I thought Sean was going to put it
Yeah, we
back
know
on
that.
since
I
he
mean,
took
that's
it off, that's
semantics
all.
right now. I
So we'd be voting on it tonight, ideally, but it's been 3 or 4, it's been a number of times because we missed some things. This is overdue. This is supposed to have been done. And so it would have been done tonight, and then maybe we could have got back to the subcommittee that's been canceled and start talking about this, because this is going to take a lot of research. We've looked at it before. We're not even prepared to pass this tonight. There's so many things that we have to consider. So I'm in support of using it at some point, but I need to better understand it, the financial impact and things like that, so.
Councilor Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Solicitor,
Yes, ma'am.
you made a remark a few minutes ago stating that a Middletown resident could go to Florida, say, up to 3 months. Let's use that as an example. Those 3 months, they could rent out their home, am I correct?
Oh, there's nothing that would prevent them from renting.
All right, who's gonna keep track of that? Who keeps track of that rental?
If it's not a short-term rental, nobody does.
So, okay, it's not a short-term rental. So they go for 4 months, is that a short-term rental?
The short-term rental would be anything less than 30 days under our ordinance.
Okay, so they rent it out for 3 months, and they get the income, but nobody knows about it. They don't know that they're renting that property. Correct?
Well, I'm not sure, if the council is going to pass an exemption, that would be one of the issues, whether a rental property or property that is used for rentals for a portion of the year would be eligible, and under what circumstances, and then once the guidelines for an ordinance are put together, then we would determine the application process and what sort of materials have to be provided to the town in order to apply for the exemption.
All right, thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. Council Von Billis.
Yeah, I thought I read the information having to do with Narragansett that identified pretty clearly what was considered residential. That residential had to do with documentation, the voting whatever, and your legal address and all of those things, where you're registered to vote primarily. Okay, and that it also talked about even multifamily dwellings, that if in fact, let's say for purposes of discussion, that you have a multifamily three dwellings, you would only be able to consider the third that was your primary residence as the
Yeah, the Narragansett ordinance and the enabling legislation for Narragansett, it's not as clear as I think it should be. When you look at the application in Narragansett, it specifically says that if you have a duplex or 2 or 3 family, that the exemption would be prorated. And there are 10 communities that have had legislation approved for homestead exemptions throughout the state, and all of those provide for residential properties of some of them are up to 5 units, some of them are up to 3 units, but
it's prorated.
they're and then a couple of them have different rates for different types of properties. Single family is at one rate, multifamilies may be at a different rate, those sorts of things.
Right, but in answer to Mrs. Santos' concern about not being here all the time, that there is an accounting.
And and most of those ordinances address, if I have a duplex, I live in one half and I rent the other half out, it doesn't, and we can look into what the other communities do if somebody has a single family home and they leave for Florida for a couple of months and rent it during that period of time.
Okay. Any other counselor? Nate, is there I'm detecting a little pinging coming back to, a little feedback coming back to the mic. Can you see anything back there? Nothing? Feedback from the mic.
No, he was talking to Nate.
Nate. Okay, next one that wants to talk, Arlene, call. Arlene.
I'm only here because of
Name and address, please.
Arlene Cole, 27 Willow Avenue.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about the senior exemption because we did mention to our seniors when I put the current exemption in the March newsletter, so they would file by March 15th, that there was going to be an update to that, and that they would open the door to more people would be able to apply for that. So it is out there. Hopefully it's coming forth. So that's my first question. My second question is when I heard that seniors may benefit by a homestead exemption. Just for your information and for my own information, the city of Providence had a homestead exemption, but they removed it. And in place, they replaced it with a lower property tax rate for owner-occupied dwellings and a higher rate for non-owner-occupied dwellings. Actually, they doubled it. It was $18 and some cents for an owner-occupied dwelling, and for a non-owner-occupied dwelling, they increased it to $39 and some cents. East Greenwich and Johnston have a 20% homestead exemption. East Providence has a 15%, West Greenwich has a 40%, and Narragansett, as you know, has 10%. And I was told that North Providence removed theirs entirely. So just for your information, I don't know if it helps or not, but I just wanted to give you that.
Thank you. Teresa Spangler? Teresa?
Hi, Teresa Spangler, 1111 Wapping Road. I didn't know we could, this is the first I've heard of this, so that's why I didn't submit my paper till just now, because I wanted to be educated on it.
You're in the window.
So a couple of things. I think this is a very great concept as a homeowner. I think it's exciting. But on the other side of it, I'm petrified as a business owner. Because if the businesses and small businesses are to pick up the slack to make up the difference, then that could potentially impact the mom and pop organizations in this town, the little diners, my program, the other schools that are small programs. I think it's a great concept. I think that this is something we need to investigate. I think voting on it tonight is a big concern. I also think that maybe some more public input, getting some more advice. I think Arlene's information was very high quality, and I think that's great to be able to look at what potential successes have happened and what failures. I think Narragansett is also a good example because they do have the tourism industry, which is what we have as well. So with our beaches, and it's a beach community. So I think that is a good comparison to utilize some of that data. But I do have to be honest with you, I'm concerned about the small businesses. So I do think it's important that if we're gonna take and give the residential tax breaks, we have to look at putting that burden onto businesses, and what is that going to do? If the businesses can't afford to sustain their business, then they're going to close and potentially not be able to afford their house, and then they're going to move out of town. So it could be potentially detrimental in that respect. So I think that this is a really large, fantastic idea. I think it's an endeavor that I'm glad the town is looking at jumping into. But I do ask that you look at the small business aspect of it as well, not just the large businesses, which do make the millions of dollars, and the rest of us little people don't. So, and you know, we want to stay in business. That's what we do. And a lot of the businesses that are around here that are still family run have been around for a very long time. So I just wanted to put that out on the table as consideration. And I don't know if this would be something that would be appropriate for a public hearing, to be able to get feedback from the residents, because they're the ones who would be directly impacted, whether they're businesses or taxpayers and residents. So I don't know if that would be an appropriate topic of conversation, but just thought I'd ask.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other council want to? Oh, go ahead.
I think we do need to find out why other communities have, I'd like us to look into that, why they did away with it, and why they replaced it with, and what they replaced it with, and the reasons why they did that. I think that's good information. Also, Mr. Frank, we did look at, we didn't do it publicly, I had put a request in a few years back for second homeowners that were non-resident second homeowners. And I only was aware of that because my cousin Billy had purchased a house in Vermont a few years back. And, you know, when he moved in and his neighbor came over and met him and thanked him very much because he was paying a higher tax rate than the residential one homeowners. Because, and that money was restricted just for schools, to help the school budget. So I think we should, and I think Vermont was the only, Sean, we had talked about that a few years back. I think Vermont was the only state in the country that did that at the time, from what the researcher brought back to me. So I think it is maybe something, not to penalize anybody, but you're right, the people, you know, if they have that kind of money to come here and do that, then, you know, maybe they should pay a little bit more when they're not really contributing anything else to the community. So maybe it's something we need to look at again.
All right, I'd just like to make a couple comments. Again, tonight, because we go from 0 to 60 in about 30 seconds here. We're receiving this tonight. Nobody has made any motions to vote on this tonight. It's obviously a broad topic that needs a lot of looking into. We certainly have to do our due diligence on something like this. I think a lot of great ideas got thrown on the table tonight, and a lot of great suggestions got thrown on the table. But, and there's certainly people in our town that need the tax relief. But we all have to understand, when we take tax dollars away, we have to supplement it to maintain the same quality of life that we have. So that's, you know, that also has to be part of our conversation down the road. I mean, when you think about it, and, you know, it's about, you know, people owning homes and they're leasing out apartments and their homes during the summer months, and, you know, should we, in my opinion, I don't think they should qualify for homestead. I think that's additional income that's coming in, even if it's short-term income that's coming in, that makes them more of a business than domestic residents. But that's just my opinion. I think we have to be very careful down the road of how we do this, because the one thing we don't want to do, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we give something, we give tax relief to somebody, and then we find out it doesn't work, and then we have to take it right back, jerk it back. So, I mean, to me, there's a lot of due diligence still to be done. I think we have to do a lot of work, and again, Council Lombardi, if I got it right, I haven't heard any motions to vote on this tonight at all. I just think it was received tonight. It was something to put on the table. And I think we should have public hearings in regards to something like this, because it's certainly going to affect everybody. And I mean everybody. Whether you're, even if you're a businessman and you don't reside in our town, it's going to affect you. And make no mistake about it, it's going to affect you, because you know something? We have to budget, and we have to budget prudently, and we have to budget with some kind of a forecast ability. And once you lose that ability, or once you change the forecasting methods, you have to make sure that you're doing it equitably, and you're doing it equitably to not only the resident here, full-time resident, but also the businesses that we try to attract to Middletown. And let's face it, you know, our businesses in Middletown bring us a lot of tax revenue. They do. So we don't want to be unfair to them either. So unless I heard anything different tonight, because I know we went from one end of the spectrum to the other rather rapidly over a period of time with a lot of exceptions. I think the motion tonight was, as we did, we seconded it, we received this communication, and I think down the road, we should look into establishing some, a protocol where the council will conduct public hearings, or where we'll look at this so we can move this along. And I would say that I think because we mirrored what Narragansett has, it may not work in Middletown, or maybe a portion of it will work in Middletown, or maybe the general outline will work in Middletown. But it's not going to work. It's not going to work unless we really take an in-depth look at it, do our due diligence on this. So I think tonight, I think we're just better off receiving this tonight. Okay. Okay. Council, Mr. Viveras, you've been holding up your hand. You want to make a comment? I'm not giving you full 5 minutes, okay? You want to make some quick comments? You already came up.
Thank you, Mr. President. My only concern is I keep hearing how the other proposal was shifting the burden.
I'm not going to hear that again.
No.
I already heard that from you tonight.
I just wanted to
I don't want to go back to where you're going.
I just want to say that I agree with you with trying to treat everybody equal and not trying to put a larger burden.
Equitable.
Right. Okay?
Everybody fairly.
Right. So that's why I say it.
Don't go back. I know where you're going, okay? That's
Because
why your proposal is better.
We sat down with the tax assessor.
Okay.
And
All right,
he
thank
explained it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so from a time perspective and a responsibility perspective, who's doing what and when we get it back? Because we need to talk about that.
Okay. Great. I think we should set a time limit on this, and I think it should be no more than 2 months like we said on the last thing, because once we get into the subcommittees, it seems there's too much time.
I know, I'm talking about it's budget time, you know, maybe it fits into the budget. I mean,
It absolutely does.
yeah, so, you know, I know the administration and staff have a lot on their plate, budget time, and, you know, beach season kicking off, and everybody's, so I just want to make sure that everyone's clear when we move on to the next subject, what the expectation is.
Councilor Von Villas.
I just suggest that we ask Mr. Brown when he thinks that, that the administration would be able to produce something that would be good for us to look at.
I honestly need to go back and listen to the tape. You all were in different directions with this. Mr. Lombardi submitted a policy, and
We're talking about when could we start going through some data, start looking at a potential impact. You know, if we went across and said, okay, we're going to give, you know, Mr. Frank threw some numbers tonight, $345,000 house, 10%, $345. Yeah, it's simple math. But how does it affect the rest of the community? And how do we make up for those numbers if we do that? And I think that's the kind of data, if we said, on the knowns that we know that are people that would apply, or that we have a fairly good assurance that would apply for this, if we gave them X% as a homestead exemption, how does it affect the rest of us or the rest of the community going forward? How does it affect our other residents, our homeowners, our business people? How does it affect them and what they're gonna possibly have to additionally deliver to us?
We got a memo from Mr. Durgan, which I think gave that information. I mean, that was on the email today
For this proposal, yes.
for this proposal. It did, it went with,
And I gotta tell you, I didn't look at it in
Okay.
detail, but
well,
why don't you make some points here? You got some points you wanna bring up? How many people could potentially sign up for this? Is that in there?
no, but it
No.
gives some
Okay.
sort of, it gives some
Yeah.
sort of, it gives dollars and percentages. Never mind, I'm just saying,
I
we
will.
did
You
get
know.
this information already.
Okay, Council Lombardi.
So, let's do this. I agree with Paul and Bobby. We need to, let's vet it out. Everybody up here had some good suggestions. Everybody did. Mr. Frank gave us some data. What I'm gonna suggest is that we give ourselves a week. Submit an email. Now, I'm not saying a week time limit. I want everybody up here, submit an email with your suggestions. Send it to the council president, send it to the town administrator, and let George and because I sat down with them once already. Anybody send an email with suggestions about what you feel would work, whether it's a flat rate, whether it's increasing the rate, the data that Arlene gave us from the other cities and towns. Let's put this all together and let's sit down at a table. I'd be happy to do it like we did before. And let's vet it out and let's come up with something that we can give back to the council in a pretty reasonable time frame. I don't know if 2 months is good because we're talking about budgets and stuff. And this fits into the budget. But I think we can come back with something in a reasonable short period of time. But I want everybody up here to put their input in, put it on paper, and we'll vet every single piece of it.
Council Santos.
With this in mind, where does the exemption stand at this time?
The senior exemptions.
Yes.
The seniors, the veterans, everything, where does that stand?
Well, we have senior exemptions now,
But
and we
were
have
gonna
veterans
update 'em.
exemptions
We were
now.
gonna
Where's the correction?
Okay,
upgrade 'em.
when is somebody gonna put that on the docket and come in with the numbers that they're suggesting?
They have it. Sean is.
So this,
Mr. President.
just in talking to the assessor, the corrected ordinance will be on the next docket.
Well, one conversation at a time. And we're getting off on another conversation too, but, go ahead, Sean.
The corrected ordinance will be on the next docket.
Okay, so the next docket. Okay? So we can move on that item then. Senator De Palma?
Mr. President, very quickly, obviously you'll need General Assembly approval, resolution. We have all 3.5 months. I encourage you to do it sooner rather than later. Understand, if tomorrow was great, we would do it tomorrow. It's not going to be tomorrow. And the only thing to think about as well, it's enabling legislation. You can choose not to do anything with it. But obviously, you want to have the right parameters in there. And as you, I think you said very appropriately, or the Vice President said, it's a template. And Tim Marigans is used as a template. At the end of the day, it needs to model what Middletown needs, what Middletown wants, what's necessary and sufficient. And you look at the deltas between the two numbers that are there. So I couldn't help myself.
I missed that, Lou. I hate to
know,
admit it.
I know.
We
But
all do.
at the end of the day, there's some time, it's not like we have to have it tomorrow. Last year, we passed the TIF bill the last day. We got it over the goal line the last day. We'd rather not do that this year. But remember, enabling legislation, whether you choose to do it or not, and same thing when they're against it. We passed legislation for them, whether they did it or not, it gave them the possibility to do it. If you're looking to do this, you want the enabling legislation to do whatever you're looking to do.
Okay, good suggestion. My suggestion would be we put this on the next docket again. And in the interim, not send up emails all over the place. You know, so they get caught in spam, or somebody doesn't read it all, or some of us will get 300 emails a day, don't have the time to digest every one of them. Let's bring it back to the next docket. And let's decide then the parameters for it and the action, because we can get the enabling legislation, and we can we can play with the numbers later. That's neither here nor there, what's inside the box. We can play with that. But let's get something on the next docket so we can better dig into this and get heading off in the right direction. Because there's a lot of impact that this has. And it's going to be a lot of good impact, but there's also going to be some negative impact. We just want to make sure that it's fair to everybody and equitable. So that would be my suggestion to do this.
So
We're
moved.
not sending emails out.
No.
Okay.
I don't want a million emails. I
It's
get
on the
enough
tape,
now.
it's on the tape anyway.
Plus they all go through all the time. You know, I mean, a lot of people will call me, didn't you get my email? And I didn't, you know.
Deleted that one.
I deleted it. Councilor Toronto.
Putting this on the next docket, I don't think I'm going to be ready for it at that time. And we have this RIPEC document that's going to be surfacing any day now. I was just told that they're just doing some model, this is supposed to be out. This is going to take some consideration, there's going to be presentations, and I think it actually impacts. I think that if we put something, let's say the tax reform is something that we are considering, then that is going to have an impact on this RIPEC study. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
Okay? I think, so we're gonna waste like $20-something thousand on this document that we're about to get if we have to go back and revisit it because we wanna put a Homestead Act in place. So I don't see us getting to it. I think there's a lot going on. So just pushing it onto the next docket, I think we're gonna end up right where we are. And I'm not sure who's gonna do the work in regards to vetting this all out. It's gonna take hours and hours and hours of time to look at what other communities are doing and why they're not doing things and why they are and what our options are. So I'm not in favor of moving it to the next docket.
Okay,
I don't think it'll be ready.
My suggestion to move it to the next docket, and I'm gonna make that a motion, okay, was for this reason. To get it there so we can have another discussion about some general parameters where we wanna go with this, okay?
I'm hoping we
General
have the
parameters.
RIPEC on the next docket.
So we'll talk about both of them.
Okay?
Talk about both of them.
Okay.
Maybe that's what we ought to be doing. Maybe we ought to be
Awesome.
talking about both of them,
I
so we
agree.
can see how they live together. Because maybe some from this one could move over to this one. We don't know. But let's just get it done. I mean, I'm not
Agree.
for, you know, we have a PhD in kicking cans down the road, I'll tell you, really. And I'm really getting tired of this. So I'm gonna put it on the docket. Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we put it on the docket for next meeting. And let's have some discussions of how we can set a parameter on it.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any further conversation?
Is it contingent to having the RIPEC on the docket?
No.
No, has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
Has nothing to do with it.
okay.
Separate from.
Just checking.
That's what I think a lot of this is happening. I mean, this isn't a competition between one and the other. This is, let's get them all done. Let's get them all done.
I agree. We've talked about it.
Okay, we have a
I
motion
think it's a
for a
good
second.
motion. But I think the RIPEC should be considered. It's going to take a lot of time and energy, so.
Okay.
So, Mr. President,
Councilor Flynn.
perhaps the motion, or we could plan to do the veterans and seniors exemptions and RIPAC and this conversation, get them on the docket, and whatever's ready, we can talk about. If not, they can always
Absolutely.
be withdrawn. Everyone good?
That's what I'm,
Sounds
that's
like
what I'm thinking.
sounds like an 11:30 meeting night to me.
Okay. That's the motion.
What's the motion?
The motion is that the homestead conversation is gonna go back on the next docket, and I'm asking the councilors to come to the meeting that night, okay, with some suggestions, so we can set some parameters that night moving forward. That's the motion. Seconded?
Yes, I did.
Second.
And there was also the,
Has nothing to do with yours. That one,
I
that,
thought you just said that.
no. I said, we
Okay.
may have overlapping conversations, but they're two separate docket items.
Okay.
Two separate docket items. Okay. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And with that, we're gonna have Councilor Toronto's request on the docket also for next meeting, correct?
Senior
Mr.
exemptions.
Brown?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Senior exemptions.
Seniors.
Senior exemptions, yes.
Yeah,
And veterans.
Yes.
okay?
And we still don't have a date for the RIPEC document. It was supposed to be today.
No, I said that we would be working towards having the modeling done.
Okay. Well, that can be a sidebar conversation. So you have that motion, right, Madam Clerk? Okay. So we'll move on to the next item. Under Town Administrator. Councilor Santos?
Yes, please.
Okay. Memorandum of the Finance Director to the Town Administrator, RE 33A.034, sole source procurement, fiber optic deployment.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
This is a recommendation from the IT director to hire Third Millennium to install or expand our existing fiber optic network. The expansion would go from the police department down to the campground. Total cost is $80,682.86. Mr. Wainwright's here tonight to answer questions about the project, but it does expand our network so that it will allow us to provide adequate data down at the, through the beach to the campground, as well as give us connectivity to the corporate part. But I'll let Matt go through the details and answer questions.
Mr. President?
Mr. Wainwright?
Yes.
Well, just your name and your occupation.
Matt Wainwright, Technology Director in the town of Middletown.
Okay. Does any councilors have any questions?
I do.
Council Flynn?
Am I reading this right, Mr. Wainwright, that the approved cost is $120,000 and it's coming in under that estimate?
So far, we are under that. It's possible we could use some of that money that's there, but yeah, right now we're under.
And the delta goes where, in case there are change orders or to something else, or?
It's a CIP, Special Revenue Fund project, so the delta in that number will probably stay in my CIP.
It stays in the capital improvement program, but there are other pieces of equipment that would be purchased part of this.
Right.
So this is the cabling part of the project. There's other equipment that'll be purchased in order to distribute the signal.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other council?
What's the time frame, Matt?
I'm hoping to have it completed in mid-April. April
Wow,
15th, April 30th.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 16, resolution of the council, RE 33A.034, sole source procurement, fiber optic deployment.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
A motion is second to pass. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 17, memorandum of the finance director to the town administrator, RE 33A.034, sole source procurement, sewer capital planning and sewer rate study.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second.
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. President, Town Council, under our debt indenture with our revenue bonds within the sewer fund, we're required to complete a rate study. The purpose of the study is to plan how we will construct our sewer rates going forward so that we can, in theory, demonstrate to the bondholders that we will be able to pay the debt service payments. The recommendation is to award a contract to Wood and Kern for $30,000 to complete the rate study. We presently use them on our legal documents, legal accruals, as well as other borrowings that we've done on the revenue bonds to assist us in this study. And I think there's, besides filling the requirement required by the borrowings, there is an opportunity here to look at how we may change the rate structure to better make the system more affordable to residents, looking at different rate structures that are used, throughout the country. So I think there's a technical requirement here and a practical requirement that we may benefit from. So.
Vice President?
So we want to hire somebody to tell us what our rate structure should be?
They would look at rate structure, but also look at what issues we're facing between now and 2024, and how that will affect the rate and affordability.
What type of issues? I mean, the only thing I can think of, Sean, is that, I understand somewhat why this is on there, but then I look at it and go, well, they can tell us anything we want, anything they want, but it's all contingent upon what Newport tells us that we have to pay for, X amount of dollars or gallons, contractually. And if they say, you know, when the if Newport could increase their I&I rate, and we have no say really over it. So I'm not sure how how the two kind of live together, so to speak, or work together as far as, I mean, I'm all for it if it's gonna help us with something, but I'm not sure what it's helping us with.
I think it could potentially help us with the position that we're gonna eventually probably have to take with any rate changes down.
Well, any rate changes, it's a requirement of our borrowing. We're not going to be able to borrow money in the sewer fund unless we do this. This is one of the conditions that we agreed to when borrowing money through revenue bonds.
Okay.
Our debt's not backed
Kinda
by,
says it all.
Okay.
by,
But
So-
you know what I'm saying, Newport, I understand what you're saying, I get that,
Yep.
that part of the requirement with our agreement for bond counsel, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's all dependent upon what Newport tells us we're gonna pay.
well,
May help them.
there's other discussions in the state that are also of concern. So one of them is that, and we do have one of the highest sewer rates in the state. We're up there with Newport, but we're also up there with the Narragansett Bay Commission. So one of the things that is being discussed in Providence is looking legislatively at sewer fees to determine how they may, as a percentage of median income, how that, rate should be set for people that are paying a disproportionate share based on their median income. There's a lot of different
Okay.
things happening that I think that if we get ahead of it, we can be more progressive in trying to
Okay.
determine how our rates are rather than just on a straight gallon basis.
Fair enough.
One question.
Council Flynn.
So Sean, I noticed that there's highlighted section on pages 46 and 47. Is this something that I'm not sure if I'm reading this right, that we have to do every 5 years? Or is this-
That's the typical increment, and for that particular borrowing, it would be, yes.
So this report's required, or this consultant, a hiring is required every 5 years? We're going to look forward to this?
Correct.
And budget this in?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Council Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Brown, you talk about sewer rates. Would this also include people who are on the sewer but not not connected to the city water?
yes, it would.
And do you have any idea what an estimate would be for the coming year?
I don't right now. I know it's being calculated, but I don't have that number handy.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions?
Yes, one more.
Okay.
So, Mr. Brown, so have we done this, I can't remember if we've done this in the past or not. Has this been a requirement in the past?
We've done it in the past.
And how has it helped us or benefited us?
It allows us to borrow money.
No, with the rate and the structure.
We haven't looked at it at this level of detail. But again, as we start to bump up with, the charge that we can charge people for sewer, it's now time where we need to look at different revenue streams or a different way of structuring the revenue streams. And again, when I got here, initially, the fee structure was based, the more water you push through the system, the cheaper the rate got. We got away from that and went with the flat fee. There are other variable tier systems that might work out better. Obviously, Mrs. Santos asked the question about well users. There may be a way to bill differently that may be a better model for the town to use. So that's what we would be looking for here.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Item number 18, resolution of the council, RE 33A-034, sole source procurement, sewer capital planning and sewer rate study.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
A motion and a second to pass. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 19, memorandum of the beach manager with enclosures, RE contract award, public announcing PA system.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
Motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, this is a recommendation from the staff to award a contract to IML Corporation out of Georgia for the purchase and replacement of the PA system that we use at Second Beach. The system that's proposed would actually cover Second Beach and Third Beach. It would be a wireless system and provide a greater messaging capability Total cost of the contract's $124,319.62. And given the public safety nature of the item, we would recommend purchasing that from the town's rescue wagon fund. So it wouldn't be on the tax rate or take away from the fund balance that we've generated within the Parks and Recreation Fund. The beach manager is here tonight. He's done a significant amount of research. We've looked at different level of systems, and he can walk through the papers that he submitted tonight. But overall, we see this as a good value point to provide a robust messaging system down at the beach, which not only we use to manage and administer the beach, but again, would provide an important public safety function, so.
Does
that
any
all-
councilors have any questions in regards to this?
Could you just
Council
repeat
Flynn.
how it's being funded, Sean? I just could not
So-
hear you very well.
So this would actually be funded from the town's rescue wagon fund, so that's a fund that is funded with dollars that are generated from the rescue wagon billings that the town uses, and typically we reserve that for purchases that benefit the public safety of the community.
I don't think anybody has any questions. I think this is kind of a must-do, public safety issue. Gentlemen, just your mere appearance tonight pushed it over the edge. Okay?
Well, wait, don't go that far.
Okay?
So, how old's the current system?
That's a great, Will Cronin Facilities, it's a great question, Paul. I don't know, it's been there. Denny Shea installed it. He dug the trenches by hand for installing the PAs. 25.
Yeah, I don't know. The current system, I think, has tubes in it. It's enormous. It takes up a good part of the office, but it has failed. It's come, the amplifier unit is no longer working, so. The new system, much more compact. It has the ability to record and schedule the messaging that needs to happen during the day. So it can be you know, if it's an announcement regarding riptides, that can be pre-recorded and set to run every 90 minutes, so it's not forgotten. Other standard messages can be programmed to run regularly. And then the other great thing about this system is it will be spread out on 4 locations in Second Beach, 1 location on Third Beach right now, and we'll be able to push the system uniformly across the entire operation. Additionally, it has the ability to be scaled further so that, and this is a discussion we have had with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Bird Sanctuary, the system can be expanded to provide signal to those facilities also.
Question?
It just,
Council?
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, it just seems like a lot of money for a PA system for, 2.5, 3 months out of the year, that's all. I mean,
Right.
What's the longevity, what's the warranty based upon, the weather and the salt air and stuff like that. They're qualified. I mean, they've done the Hong Kong Police Department, is what I've read. So it just seems like it's almost over the top a little bit for me. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Council Flynn.
And just to segue onto that, thank you, Paul, for that introduction. When we met in December, I think we were talking about systems that were running, 7,000 to 18,000. So I'm just wondering, and I know that you had a concern with the quality and people being able to hear. And so I guess my question is, how did we get to 124,000? And what does this, I see the map, and and thank you, Sean, for saying some of the capabilities. I'm just wondering, if the same thing's coming off of all of the ones on Second Beach, the same message, just give me that background, how you got to the 124,000 and how this system is going to actually function, from a user standpoint.
Good evening, Craig Schmidt, Town of Middletown Beach Manager. Answer your last question first. The zones can be sectioned, it can be put into zones. So what can be said at the main beach doesn't have to be broadcast at Third Beach. One other feature that's nice is that remote access for emergency personnel. So the police OI officer in charge, if he or she needs to put a message out for public safety, can do it from either a walkie-talkie or a phone. My lifeguard captain, we need to execute rescue or get people out, myself or the fire department. So we can, key leaders to manage public safety can access it from any point. We don't have to go to a speaker. It could be at Third Beach and just put a broadcast out to Main Beach and vice versa. How did we get to $124,000 from when we gave you your briefing in December? So I started working out benchmarking, as I said in the memo, with different companies and beaches in similar scale and scope. Negative reviews from one company, positive reviews from a company that came and did a site survey, Metro Sound Pros, on December 12th. He did the site survey, had promised a deliverable, was falling behind repeatedly, and I realized I needed to do further due diligence, find a capable company with it that had done similar installations. So through just internet search, looking at what I felt were qualified suppliers, I found Ion Airport, and they had just recently done, not a beach, but 212 square miles in the desert for the Army in Nevada. It was a recent install, wireless, huge amount of cost savings. Contacted them on December 31st. That was after we had met for the briefing. Said, I'm the beach manager, would you be interested? We had a conference call on January 3rd with Will. Give the company an overview of this is the scope of our beaches. We all have Google Maps out, explain the nature of the loading of the people, densities. They were interested and said, I recommend you need to come up and do a site survey. So they did. They responded very quickly, and we're here on, so from December 31st to a site survey on January 22nd and 23rd. We did walkthroughs. We did a system. They set up a system demonstration. It was great conditions because it was 35 miles an hour of onshore wind. So we could really see how audible it could be through the wind in different directions. The clarity was impressive, and it can be adjusted as needed. Clearly a capable supplier. Did I answer all your questions?
Yes.
Council Santos?
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Craig, how are you?
Very good.
Let's see. When would this system be turned on in the morning? What time?
As soon as when we open up
the
at
beach.
7 a.m., so 7:15 is when the first staff is arriving.
And what time would it close in the evening?
When we close, between 6 to 7 p.m. when the final beach staff is off.
Okay. Now, this would not go over to the boat ramp, correct?
Yes, it would. The scope of the installation, based on how busy we are on all the beaches and the areas, is ideally I wanted to get coverage everywhere, not just in the main lot. So there will be a speaker at Third Beach.
Okay.
That then will cover the boat ramp area all the way down the beach to Peabody's, so that we can manage the safety there.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Council Toronto?
Yes. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good. Will? Do we have, I should probably know this, do we have a speaker at Third Beach right now?
No.
No, right?
No, the only coverage we have by installation is from the east end of the beach at Path 1 to Path 8. That system is degraded, so last year when we opened, we only had coverage from the speakers at the main building, which came out in arc on the main beach to maybe the main Tower 6 and Tower 4. Now, clarity wasn't great, so that was only about 40% of the beach.
Right. To me, it did jump out at me, the number, $124,000. I was like, holy mackerel. I remember when they put the speakers in down there, the first ones, it was one and then two, and then it kept expanding. I'm sure it wasn't even close to this number. So are we buying something more than we actually need down there at this time? I mean, there got to be other systems that are a lot less expensive than this, but I'm sure we'd give up some features and functions, So is it...
in benchmarking what we would get with this system at $124,000 with the wireless system as compared to what the city of Cape May, which is similar in length and beach and the depth of the beach, who removed the Visiplex wireless system due to poor clarity, installed Metro Sound Pro's hardwired system, but they already have light structures approximately every 75 feet. They have an infrastructure there. It's just taking one type of speaker off and then wiring in the Metro Sound Pros. Metro Sound Pros is the hardwired system, did the site survey on December 12th. The scope of that project was 400,000 plus and 22 installed poles. Now, we took the poles, the poles were removed from the road. Will and I clearly recognize that was not the direction aesthetics nor costs that we wanted to go. So to answer your question, I feel that for $124,000 for 5 to 6 poles and speakers, wireless with the technical capabilities, remote access, we're getting a great value.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Councilor
I'd
Floyd.
like to go back to Councilor Rodrick's question, the warranty on this system, and
I'll clarify that for this. We had discussed that, myself and the team, when they were up here in January. I think once we refine the quote, they're going to give us an answer and stand by their equipment. I think it'll be a quality warranty. I don't have a time frame for you, and I'll find out.
And, you know, again, to take up on Paul's information, it's only used for 3 months, so it may have to be a warranty for seasons, not just a start to finish type of thing. I would be interested in, you know, having you, to negotiate with them.
Understood.
And lifespan of this system, is it good, given the conditions that it's installed in?
Yeah,
This should last.
This should last a very long time, ma'am. These are installed in the desert overseas and ocean conditions in Hong Kong Harbor. This is a very durable system designed to withstand the corrosion and the salt air.
You can get back to us with
I'll give
firmer
you a precise
numbers.
number. Yes, ma'am.
That would be great, thank you.
Mr. Viveras, do you want to make some comments?
My question, this system will cover Second and Third Beach,
That's what they just said.
and well, I'm just checking.
Okay.
And so any announcements made at First Beach, Second Beach, if there's an emergency or whatever, they will hit it over at the Third Beach. So it's wide range and it's all wireless.
What I got out of it, if they so desire, they could limit it to just around the main pavilion. They could get it over to Third Beach Boat Ramp. It's where they want the message to go.
If they just want it on Second Beach, they can just have
It
it.
would just be Second Beach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Vice President.
So, Craig and Will, there's a pretty big, I'm just stuck on the price, because they're going from 9,700 on one bid to 124,000 another bid, and you cited an example of a place that was hardwired for $478,000. So, there's some pretty big gaps there. Is it something that we spec'd out? Is that why the first company didn't meet the requirements? They didn't meet the specs we spec'd out? Because we had to have specs, right?
The first company, Metro Sound Pros, once we received the install plan in January, at the end of January, the amount of infrastructure, 22 poles to be installed across, up and down the main beach and over at Third, that didn't meet the intent of the system that we wanted, plus the cost. Labor, digging conduit through all the roads. Clearly more of a much larger system, physical infrastructure than what we needed. Clearly above cost.
I know, but it goes from 9,700 to 124,000.
Correct. 9700 is a company that is essentially a PA system in a box. Call us, and we'll tell you how to install it. That's a very, what I've found out in benchmarking with other beaches who have had that, installed it, they do not like the performance. They're dissatisfied, dissatisfied to the point that I was told anecdotally, a class action lawsuit could be in the offing from cities in New Jersey.
Okay, but did we disqualify them because they didn't meet our specs, or did we disqualify them because we got bad reviews on them? I mean, there had to be specs that we put out there for bids, right?
The specs.
And there was a bid process. I'm reading 3 bids, right?
Yeah, this is a quotes.
It's not a bid process, then it's a quote. Then why don't we go to bid?
I can't answer that, sir.
Well, I think we should go to bid. Maybe we'll get better, more competitive rates.
You alluded to that you don't have or know of the guarantee that these people have?
They're gonna define that for us, once we got the.
Why would they define it later? I'm gonna buy $125,000 worth of equipment, and they're gonna tell me later what they're gonna guarantee it for?
Exactly.
That was my next
I'll find
question.
out.
What kind of company?
Let me just finish if I can, you guys. Once in a while. You know, but I just don't understand that. I mean, you're talking $125,000, and granted, with the fund that it's coming from, but that could be wisely used for other things, equipment, police vehicles, rescue vehicles for the fire department. You can't sell me on this $125,000. I'm gonna tell you straight out. I don't see the money there. You certainly red flagged me with your, you don't know what kind of guarantee they have. They're gonna tell us later. Man, I'll tell you, it has to be some Hong Kong Harbor company that came over here. And if you ever seen Hong Kong Harbor's a big harbor, you know? Okay, Councilor Lombardi.
You just gave it my main concern. What kind of company gives you a quote without any kind of warranty, guarantee, and?
Yes, sir. I'll find out. I need to know that now. No.
You know what, I'm not, and it's not, but the company makes me wonder, when they give you a quote for materials and whatever it takes to put this system in, and doesn't give you some type of service contract and guarantee on their materials and stuff. There's something fishy about it. I don't like it. I'm not supporting this without something.
Yeah, well, I'll have that answer for you.
That's crazy.
Vice President has one more question.
I think. So, definitely one. But, so Sean, how does this get to us without a bid?
Well, the reality is that I think we've been working on this idea. It's been the Big Voice project for probably 5 years. And as we go out and talk to Wayland and these other vendors, it is very difficult to find a qualified vendor to show up, do a site visit, to do a demo, and to put a product out there that we can actually look at that fits in with our beach. And that's what Craig has worked on. And we've looked at the 3 options. He sought out a number of vendors. He's visited a number of beaches and talked to a number of people that have put these systems in. And what we have is we have the low-cost system, which doesn't seem to work out well or provide a quality service. We have this wireless system that we've identified that appears to be at a reasonable price point and provide a reasonable level of service. And then we have the $500,000 hardwired system that would cross between 2nd and 3rd beaches. I think this has been a practical approach to find a vendor who can actually perform the work, provide a product that will work for our beaches. We can certainly put it out to bid. I'm not confident we're going to find a bidder easily, just based on the history of having worked on this for the last number of years, but certainly we can put a bid spec together and do that.
Well, I'm a little confused because I thought they were over a certain dollar amount, things have to go out to bid. And number 2, it says right here from Craig, it says, I have reviewed 3 bids. It says bids, so maybe it's the wrong word you used, I'm not sure, but I would think that if we're gonna approve certain dollar amounts, there's ordinances in place, I don't know if it's over $5,000, $10,000, that they go out to bid. So I don't know what would make this any different than anything else, and I don't like it.
And then I would just simply reject it, and we'll go out to bid, and we'll come back with something else.
What's that? Sean, I didn't hear. Peter was sneezing.
We can put the item out to bid, that's fine.
Yeah, and that's fine, and you're right. Maybe we won't get one. Maybe we'll come back with the same dollar amount. I don't know. But we need to follow the process. I mean, we can't pick and choose when we follow processes or not.
Well, again, I think the approach to this has been to be practical and to be successful and to have a unit in place for the beginning of the beach season. And that's what the staff did. We're not trying to circumvent the process. A considerable amount of work has gone into researching systems, talking to people that have been successful with systems up and down the East Coast. This was seen as the most practical way of finding a system that will work for our beach, and doing it in a manner that we thought was in the best interest of the town. But we can certainly go out to bid and spec out a system.
Okay. All right. Item number 20, resolution of the council, award of the contract for a public announcing system for the beaches.
Mr. President, I'd ask to withdraw the item from the docket.
Okay. At the town administrator's request, we'll withdraw the item number 20, the resolution, to award the resolution from the docket. Does any councilor have any issues with that?
Why are we withdrawing it? Why don't we just vote on it?
Well, we can vote on it, and then we can go back to square one. Okay.
Question?
Councilor Flynn?
Do we need a motion to initiate this RFP to get this moving?
No,
We do not, okay?
we do not. Okay. You want to...
I don't like the whole way this whole thing went down. I don't like all of a sudden last minute, we didn't go out to bid, so we're gonna withdraw it. It's just
All right, let's do
picking and
this.
choosing how we wanna operate. I don't like it.
Motion to pass said resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. All in favor of passing the resolutions to fund the system signify by raising your hand. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, item number 21. Memorandum of the Finance Director with enclosures RE FY 2019 budget adjustments as of December 31st, 2018.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second.
Have motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, Mark.
Mr. President, members of the council. Tonight, there are 9 budget adjustments for the general fund. The 9 budget adjustments total $487,427. This would make the general fund budget $30,862,350. The 2 main budget adjustments are due to the fire department suppression system. That was the insurance claim. And the second item is we have details that are over budget for all the private details, which offset the expenses that occurred. Any questions on the budget adjustments?
No, I saw him. I thought you did a good job. I think the,
Thank you.
good job on that, Mark,
Thank you.
sincerely. All right, any questions from the council?
I just have
Go right
question.
ahead,
Yeah.
Councilor
So
Toronto.
the 193.77 is kind of offset by expenses that we already
Correct,
had,
yes.
correct? So it's kind of a wash.
National Grid has been doing all projects in town. You've seen the trucks.
Was that on budget compared to what we thought it was going to be for the year?
Well, it's more than what we've budgeted for revenue and expenditures, so the revenue generated offsets the expenditure.
Well, okay.
And they're almost done with that project, but there's other projects that happen throughout the town.
Do our revenues exceed the expenses, or is it just a wash?
It's pretty much a wash. There's a little component to offset the cost of the vehicles.
Should we be getting more money to offset other expenses, or is that something we should be looking at?
The ordinance dictates what we charge,
Uh-huh,
so that would have to be changed.
okay. And then the $650,000
Yes, so that is...
crack ceiling?
So that has no impact on the budget bottom line. So what we're doing is, the crack ceiling, right now it's in a capital expenditure. It's really not a capital item. Crack ceiling the roads is not a capital asset. So we're reclassifying it from the capital asset to the operations as maintenance of roads. And the same thing with the permanent patch project. It's all in the same budget. It's not a capital item. It's really maintaining the roads.
Comes out of the same budget?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just a reclassification because it's really
Okay.
not capital. And every year when we do the audit, it's in the capital account, we capitalize it, but it's really not capital.
Thanks for keeping this out of the consent calendar. I just have to say that.
Thank you.
Councilor Santos.
Good evening, Mark.
Good
Thank you,
evening.
Mr. President. Number 3, you the auxiliary building behind the Berkeley Peckham Senior Center is down.
Yes.
Okay, and you're using funds from the Joel Peckham School Special Revenue. Where do we get the revenue from?
Well, that was the rents that we received a long time ago, that
We
was still
still
in the
have money?
fund. So that fund would now be zero balance, so we
Okay.
use that to offset the cost too.
So it's zero in that Joel Peckham,
It doesn't get rents anymore, but it used to in that capital.
right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, item number 22,
Mark.
resolution of the council, general fund, FY 2019 budget adjustments as of December 31st, 2018.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to pass. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 23, boards and committees, communication of Mike Fenton, RE, resignation from the Roads and Utilities Advisory Board.
Motion to receive said communication with regret.
Second.
We have a motion and second to receive. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye. You ready? Motion to adjourn.
Amen.
We have-
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sean? Sean?
Yes, ma'am.